Perfect, so we are good to go. So what are we going to need? We are going to need default gun string, which is going to be our template that will look like this. All right. So we want a primitive. We want the primitive to be hello world. We will want to have a date. That date is going to be with pipe 2019 12. I think we are the 18th, and this is going to be at noon. Let me think, it's like this, I'm pretty sure. And I think there is 3, want to be UTC. So we'll want to have a big integer, which is going to be not so big, but get the ID. We want to get a symbol, and something that people don't really know. So this one is going to be not symbol because it may be confusing, but test, sure. We want an actual object, and that object is going to be name Arthur. We want another object with the name of Arthur2. So as you can see, it's going to be very, very closely related to JSON. It looks just like JSON, just with added string serialization option for different data types here. And we are going to say this one gets a link, and that link is going to be foo. Perfect. I will need to get a list of things. So for instance, it's going to be test, it's going to be foo, it's going to be bar, and it's going to be wrong path, let's say. I will want to add a reference. Sure, so we already did it, but let's go back to foo. We will want to get a ref list, so it's going to be a reference to a list, and pretty straightforward. And we will want to get fake ref, which is going to look like Arthur, my foo, but it's not going to be the same. All right, so I think we're pretty covered with something like this. Yeah, looks good. So when I have this, I want to put this into a state. So it's going to be string, and we need set string. This is going to be use state of default gun string, and we are going to use this as a text area, so input, and anyone can type their thing. So that's what the playground is going to be all about. This is going to change stuff. We want to parse it, then we'll want to stringify it back. So parsing should be always in try catch block. Because you may have like an infinite things, you may do bad things. So parsed gun is going to be gun parse a string, and if it's not good, we'll be cheating a little bit. This is going to be to string, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so we'll just start building stuff here. So h1, we want it to be a gun string, and we want a text area that's gonna get the value of string and the on-change set string e target value. Sure, I'm missing here. Alright, so we have this, which burns my eyes a little bit, but we are going to fix this. Let's fix it right now. So text area, and this is going to be for the whole application. Pre and text area are going to get those niceties. There we go. And text area is going to get extra ones. For instance, the color straight up. So this one is going to be var color. Do we want to get the border none with like semicolon here, and outlines none. Ah, looks way better. So let's go back to not the footer, not the header, playground CSS centered. We don't need playground. After that, we will need an h1 that says JSON stringified object. So I can't really show the object, so maybe we'll do like a component that builds a visual representation of the object. But at the moment I don't have it, so we'll just skip that part. And this one is going to be a pre, and this is going to be stringify parsed gun. Let me see. Do not know how to serialize big int. Perfect. So we are going to. It's actually a great stringified JSON. Let's call it this way. And we're going to do a try catch block. Okay, so stringify JSON is equal to JSON stringify parsed gone. This one is equal to string, and I am going to use this one here. All right, and that's where we were going to get our text area specific. Width is going to be 100%. Minimum height is going to be 14 rems. We'll see how it works. Perfect. And why are you expanding here? Is it because it is not catched by okay, box sizing. Do I have text area here? Sure. Text area. Okay. Block quote, and of course, because I need to display it as a block. All right, there we go. We got our box sizing and everything. Perfect, 15. First try. So here is where JSON doesn't really work because you can't represent any big int values. If I remove this one, I get a nice and long string. So I'm going to null1. There we go. And we have it. So let me unzoom a little bit. So stuff you may see, I'm going to zoom a little bit, is I get my primitive, I get my date, and here is the JSON stringifying. So you would want to actually create a new date using this string, whereas you wouldn't need to create a new date because it's already in the data serialization. You can see the symbol is straight up bypassed by JSON. So if you need symbols and you need to send them and retrieve them, not going to work for you. I got my objects, didn't change. And then I have my second object with a link. And you see that here the link is populated with the reference. So in my case, it's going to be foo, so the first thing. Then I have my list, where I have my test. Then I have my first object, Arthur, here for foo. Then I need bar. I get the same bar. And null because this one is a wrong path. I will also have a straight up reference, which is the same. Then I have the reference list, which is the same as the one we have here on the list. And the fake reference here, Arthur, is just alone, but we don't see any difference in JSON in between this Arthur to that Arthur that is in foo here to this one. And that might be a problem because you may want to have like fancy logic that goes and get the names, and if that name is the same, you match them together and you update all of the author if you want to change names for a specific user. So this is how JSON is supposed to work, and this is how parse from the GON is supposed to work as well. So we are all good. I am going to add a new thing though, and this is going to be stringified GON. And I'm wondering, stringify for GON should never fail. Stringification never fail. So I'm going to put my eggs on the same basket and say I'm trusting my own library, stringify, and I'm going to stringify parsed GON, and I'm going to give him the same options, and I'm going to straight up copy paste here. GON, stringified, stringified GON, and you'll see the difference very quickly, unless it does crash. All right. So first of all, if you are using, I'm gonna zoom here on the desktop. So here, and I am going to move myself. Let's remove this, and I'm going to move myself to a part of the screen that is not that interesting. So we have our GON string, and that's something that JSON cannot serialize because you have a big int value, for instance. So this one here is the big int, and JSON doesn't know what to do with it. So basically it just fails. You can see that if you actually serialized using GON, and I'm actually gonna fix here because we think of GON as JSON, doesn't pose any problem because there is a way to represent big int on the data format itself. So there is a serialization for it, so no problem. Same goes for symbols. If I remove here the big int, you see it works, but the symbol is gone. There's no way to represent symbols in JSON, and there's no rational way to do it, at least, in JSON. But here, symbol stay the same, and you can actually export your symbol using GON. And retrieve them on the client side or on the server side, it doesn't matter. It actually used the key for and the for methods for the symbols. And here is where it becomes really interesting. Because we specified here everything by value. So we had insight about foo and where foo was. But if you get an object to be general, you need to actually put those references somewhere. So what the GON stringify does by default, and you need to make sure you're a little bit careful with it, because stringify at the moment actually mutate the object you're trying to stringify. So if you want to use the object for something else, you may have trouble. And this is something that's going to be changing later on, but at the moment of this video, it's how it works. But it actually creates a reference object where all the references are stored, and you can see that the goal is to remove all of the duplication. And you'll see also where that fake reference that looks like foo but isn't foo actually is shown on that graph way of doing things. So I get foo. Foo is my first reference. If I go here, I get my first reference. I got bar, which is a different object, second reference. And you can see in that object, I got a reference to the first one. So if in my code, I were to change this reference, all of the reference to that object would be automatically changed, which wouldn't be the case if I go here and I change foo. All of the other ones will just stay Arthur. So if I want to change to Bob, I'll just need to change to Bob, and I'll need to change all of the objects having the name Arthur to Bob to reflect that change, because they are not linked together. But this poses a problem with fake reference, because in the data format of JSON, there is no way of differentiating that object to this object. And that's why you would be using IDs, that's why you'll be using other ways of identifying than just the name. But it comes pre-built with like an actual graph notation. So we'll be continuing here. Here we got our list, the list which is third one, where we got our test, we got the reference to our first foo element, then the bar element, and a wrong path. So if you just like have a wrong path, it's just going to be null, and there's just going to be null. Here, if you look at fake reference, you actually see that even though the name and everything is the same, in memory, when we created that object here, it's actually a different object, and this is reflected here by being just alone in this corner. So if for some reason I was to update Arthur, it would just update the name in all of the right places and wouldn't change this one, because this is a different object. Even though it's the same structure inside, it's going to be a different object. So if, for instance, I was to copy paste this one, you'll see there's just a small change that's going to happen. There you go, copy pasting. Oh, what was it expecting? Do you have a problem with null? Sure, so I have a problem with null on my passing library. I'll see how it works, because most likely it's null in arrays. I'll just note somewhere and I'll fix this later on. But you'll see that you get pretty much the same thing, except everything is in a data object. So if I go here, we got data, and that's one of the limitations that you need to be super aware of, is when you stringify something using Gone, will actually put all of your data in an object, and the data property will be your data property will have all of your actual content, and we'll also add another reference property where we store all the references. So in this case, you see that references is also twice there, because we just inputted something with data in it and reference in it. So it's something you need to be aware of, and the reason that Gone is working this way is because you can be inputting pretty much anything in it. So if you want to input an object, that's great. We could merge reference in it. But if you want to import an array, it's a little bit more tricky to add like a reference in it. It would be possible, but it's not really super clean, because then it would be part of the array itself. Not great. So it's like a trade-off where we want it to be super simple. You just query when you pass something and you stringify it later. And that stringified, you want want it back to be parsed, you need to actually access the data property in it. At some point in future, it might be automatic. So if you feed something with data and references, then it will automatically consider this to be an actual string that was stringified first, and just like merge it and do everything as it should be doing. But I'm not sure that inconsistent behavior is actually a great way to go forward. So at the moment it's just this, and yeah, so I'm going to just reload this because there's something else I want to show you, and that's the real reason why I started working on that project. And it's very simple. It's, let's say you don't have a big int here, you have your nice, we'll make it simpler. You just have here, let's say you have an array of twits. And you want something like text hello and world. So yeah, that would be text, of course. Hello world. All right. Then here you have your author, and it's gonna be by name. So by ID, we'll get Arthur, and this is going to be an object in itself, and this is going to have a name, and this is going to be Arthur. Perfect. All right, so we have our thing, and you could be using it to be doing something like this. So you have Arthur, this would be Arthur1. There you go. And the same for this one here. There you go. So in traditional JSON, you actually return a tree structure. So Arthur would be repeated here. But it would be also super interesting to add twits here. So let's say you just had here twits. You could be doing like twits 1. And here you have something that just like breaks because you have a cyclic value. And let's say you have here an array of twits, and you want to have also twits 2. So actually it would be 0 in this case. All right. So it becomes a little bit more complex, but JSON actually breaks here because you get cyclic value where you have twits that have author that also have twits, which is the same, and it just dies. So if you look at twits here in my gone string, so this is the way a human would write it. But if you wanted to get this, put this to machines, and you want to stringify the machine, we don't know what twits are and what author is. So, and actually I would be doing this, tweet authors, perfect, to make sure it's consistent. But this is what the machine would be spitting out. So if we could help at some point in the project to just push a schema or something to be like tweets are specific things, authors are a specific kind of object, and you need to merge and fetch them. we could save a lot of referencing and everything. But in the end, it worked just the same, because if I was to import this as a gun string, I would still get the cyclic object in JavaScript. So, twits. This is first reference. The first reference is an array of reference to the third and the fourth one. So the third is my first twit, hello, with an author. And we'll see that author is author, so that would be me. And the twits themselves are in a reference with an array of its own here. So one of the things that I could be doing to save a lot of referencing and stuff like this would be to not reference arrays, because most likely an array is not going to be repeated much. So maybe it's going to be the default way of doing it. I'm not sure the spec is going to change a lot, but that would definitely save like 2 references and makes everything clearer. But yeah, you get it. So using this string, I can actually recreate my cyclic object and make sure I can input it either in a graph QL database, so I can have like a static gun file where I can just like input any kind of cyclic information, and then query this with the GraphQL query language, and get a tree back. But I could also gun stringify at some point using the GraphQL schema and make sure like every same object are actually references, to make sure we don't have deduplication of authors. For instance, if you have 25 twits, same author, you want to be in one spot. So when you actually fetch it on your client side, if you decide to change the name of the author, it would just like update everything. And also to get the cyclic version where the author has some twits. So if you click on the author itself, you still have the twits, and on the twits you also have the author. Then you can click on the author itself, you still have the twits. And it's not like a tree where you actually have to query like 25 levels, because it doesn't really make sense. All right, so I think that's pretty much it for the playground. I am going to fix a few things because it looks like null in arrays are not great. And I am also going to try to put the arrays as not being referenced by default, but still getting like a parameters where you could just say, I want arrays to be references because they might be duplicated. All right, I think that's pretty much it. And that concludes that small scale playground. So hopefully I will push this to the web and you'll see how it would work. So I think I'll this is not YouTube, so it would be a stream. I'm not sure if I can just like link everything, but for the one person that watched it and stay silent, yeah. All right, so I guess I'll see you Friday-ish, most likely closer to the afternoon, night, because it would be better, I think, a stream schedule. Just like trying out a different schedule and see how it would work related to work and stuff. All right, so I hope you had fun, Lonely Watcher, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.